part 3 of my DVD and Blu-ray update for February 2025. Ahoy everybody, welcome to part 3 of these videos. Watch parts 1 and 2 and I'll explain, but here's what should be the final part to bring us up to date. I'll just go straight into it. So if you watch part 2, I've talked about Go Faster Stripe and the sale they had on, where they're basically clearing their DVD stocks and they're selling them off for like £3 each, so I just picked up any I didn't already have, regardless of who they were by, because of that price they're worth a punt. And here's a few of those. First up we have Simon Munnery's FileMaker. So I showed on a previous update another of Simon Munnery's Film DVDs. But basically it's a way of doing stand-up where he sits behind the audience and he projects the performance onto a screen for them, but he's got a mechanism where he can do live animations and cut in films and all sorts of stuff, and sort of draw, and it's almost like an overhead projector, but it's far more complicated than that, but at the same time quite simple because he's made it himself. But yeah, funny stuff. He's a funny guy, very talented. Yeah, very good. This is Scott Agnew. I've snapped my banjo string. Let's Just Talk. This was okay. So he's a Scottish comedian, a gay comedian who's had various issues with drugs. He's HIV positive. You know, it's all very... It's a bit too... There was that period where a lot of comedy, or, you know, award-winning comedy especially, is almost needed to be based around something tragic that had happened. Now, there's still that to an extent, you know. One of my personal favourites, Richard Herring, is... I saw last year on his tour about his testicular cancer that he's about to go back out on the road with. But, you know, there was a time when it was all about, how my, you know, my dad didn't love me or stuff like that, you know. Very bittersweet comedy, if you like, and this was largely that. It made me laugh a few times, but yeah, wasn't anything particularly great, just not really my style of comedy. Arnold Brown, Jokes I Have Known. So Arnold Brown is sort of one of the original alternative comedians. He briefly pops up in The Young Ones. So he's a Jewish Scottish comedian. 2 stereotypes for the price of 1. This is his opening line in practically every gig he's done. This was a bit of a strange release because it was sort of him sitting, talking to the audience, and it was largely a straight comedy show, but it almost felt like a tryout at times. He was referring to notes, and you know, and it was almost him deconstructing the routine at times. It was interesting. It was, you know, at times hilarious, at times okay. Yeah, a strange performance, enjoyable, particularly as a comedy fan, to sort of get a bit of the workings, if you like, behind the act, but not outstanding. This is Simon Donald, Comic to Comic. So Simon Donald co-created Viz, the comic. Any Brit will be aware of it, I'm sure. So this is a live show that he toured. This is actually recorded in Newcastle. It's in 2 halves. The first half is sort of like the story of Viz, and it's him with, you know, a slideshow and talking about where various characters came from and various people who run Viz, how they became successful, etc., which was interesting and, you know, funny in parts, but it was interesting. And the second half was 5 comic characters he's created to do live. There's Bingo from Benton, who's a drunken street philosopher and charmless aggressor. Jeremy Jitler, a novice comedian lacking a sense of humour. Rick Kestrel, Cockney motormouth and supplier to the stars. Dominic Farquhar, first-year medic, the funniest guy on his whole landing. In fact, he's probably the funniest guy in the whole of Mandela Halls, actually. And then Barry Twyford, who I'll come back to. So those four, the bits with them weren't particularly long. They were okay. You know, there was some laughs in them, but they would never be huge, successful characters. But Barry Twyford is a fantastic character. He's a market research person, but, you know, and it's done largely interactively with the audience. But, you know, it's really bizarre questions and it's just really, really funny, basically. And he's done that as standalone spots in comedy clubs. There's a recording of one on here. Yeah, it was, you know, that is definitely the standout of the whole DVD. Was the two, that sort of bookends that section, him doing him, and yeah, that was by far the funniest bit of it all. Simpsons season 18, which I think is the last one released over here. Season 20 was released in the US, but I don't think season 19's been released anywhere, and nothing after season 20, I believe. Yeah, it's definitely... So this was just before the film, I think, and I know, you know, most of the top writers were concentrating on doing the film, and this does suffer for it. You know, there's always some good moments, there's always some very funny moments. What sort of strikes me most with this era is that although the episodes are only, like, you know, 20 minutes long, they try to cram 3 separate storylines into each one, and it very often doesn't really work. But yeah, still, some very good stuff in it, and it's The Simpsons. Eddie Izzard, Force Majeure Live. So, a while back, you would have seen me talk about the Eddie Izzard live box set that I picked up cheap in a charity shop, and about those. So when I finished that, I enjoyed it enough that I ordered this, which is his most recent live show. He was a he then, rather than a they or a she. And it's good, it's funny. You know, it's not astounding. There's better Eddie Izzard shows, but it's enjoyable and it made me laugh a fair bit. Back onto some films. This is Lost Girls and Love Hotels, which is a film starring Alexandra Daddario, who goes to Japan, works as a she sort of works for an airline where stewardesses, whatever you want to call them, are being trained, and she sort of teaches them English so they can deal with English-speaking passengers. But she's a very broken individual, and she likes to pick up strangers for sex and go to these love hotels and have them tie her up and what have you. And she gets drunk every night, and that affects her work. But then she meets somebody, but he's married, and it's all very, you know, quite standard plotting, but it's very well done. It looks really good. Daddario is fantastic in it. Yeah, enjoyed that a lot. Jurassic World Dominion. Again, a film, I say again, watch previous couple of parts. A film that I'd heard quite negative things about, but I enjoyed it. Apparently this extended version, which is what I watched, I didn't watch the original theatrical version, is a lot better than the theatrical version, which might explain that. But it's nice that it brings back Sam Neill and Laura Dern and Jeff Goldblum. And all the cast are really good in it, I think. And the effects are excellent. And it's a typical Jurassic Park / World plotline. And I enjoyed it a lot, basically. Rod Gilbert, The Book of John. So this was his last DVD before his cancer diagnosis and his brief time out from comedy whilst he dealt with that. This is largely a tale about his quest, if you like, to have children with his partner. They had to go through IVF and have lots of, treatment and what have you. And for various reasons, he hired a driver at the time called John, who was very a strange individual with a strange sense of humour, took things very literally. Rod obviously milks it and gets the most out of it. Rod Gilbert is an excellent stand-up comedian. He is a great watch. He crafts a hour, or a set really well. Very funny, very good, basically. So this is Morecambe and Wise at the Thames. So this is all of Morecambe and Wise's shows from after they left the BBC in 1978, I think it was, through to Eric's death. In 84, 3, whenever it was. Anyway, that's irrelevant really. So it's all their Morecambe and Wise shows and their Christmas specials that they did for Thames in that era. But they did stuff for ITV before they went to the BBC. I've owned those. I watched those years ago. These are enjoyable, not peak Morecambe and Wise. I'll be talking more about Morecambe and Wise in a minute. So it's trying to think. I'll talk about this a bit more then. Okay, a good release though. This is Lola. So this is a film that I bought purely because the soundtrack is by Neil Hannon, who is the Divine Comedy, my favourite band. I adored this film. This is a 5-star film for me. I absolutely loved it. It's about two sisters in wartime, Second World War, who have created a machine that can use... So they worked out that because radio waves can be picked up from the past, they should in theory be able to be picked up from the future. And they managed to create this machine that uses future radio waves and broadcasts, and make them watch them, so they can watch David Bowie on Top of the Pops in 1973, back in 1937. They use it for their own success, betting on horse races and other things you would do. But then they also then find out about the war, and they use the machine to help the Allies in the war. And it's the story of what happens there, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but being a film almost about time travel, obviously there's a knock-on effect of them doing this. Two excellent performances by the girls who play the sisters, Emma Appleton and Stephanie Martini. But yeah, it's all in... Is it all in black and white? I'm having a moment now. Yeah, it's all in black and white. But it looks great. Soundtrack, as I say, unbiased, but it's fantastic. Yeah, as I say, 5-star film for me. Absolutely loved that. This is John Hegley with Tony Curtis. So this is another of the Go Fast and Stripe releases. So John Hegley is a comedy poet, basically. I've always liked him when he's cropped up on stuff, so I was happy to pick this up. He does little songs as well as straight poetry. A lot of it was very funny. Tony Curtis is an old school friend of his who plays keyboards for him. Yeah, very enjoyable. Like that a lot. This is 9 Bullets. So this was a film... Basically, I got because Lena Headey's in it. So she plays a character who we sort of learn about throughout the film, so I won't go into too much detail. But one of her neighbours owes a load of money, steals a load of money from a gangstery type guy played by Sam Worthington, who used to be in a relationship with Lena Headey. The whole family gets killed, apart from the son who wasn't with them. Lena runs off with the son to try and save him, basically, and it's a story about that chase, if you like, and negotiations, etc. Is no, couple of shootouts, but not really an action film. It's a drama, bit of a thriller element. But Lena is fantastic as always. Sam Worthington's very good. The kid's very good. It's well plotted. As I say, you learn about her throughout the story, so that keeps it moving. Yeah, very good. This is The Suicide Squad. So this was the James Gunn Suicide Squad film. I loved this, basically. Yeah, absolutely loved this. I'm sure, again, most of you will have seen it. I can watch Margot Robbie in anything. I can watch Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn till the cows come home. But yeah, it's very funny. Great performances all around. Beautifully done. Loved it. This is Spy Maker, The Secret Life of Ian Fleming, which I watched years and years and years ago as a Bond fan, of course. But was glad to pick up. This is a Warner Brothers Archive release, so it's technically an American release, and it's on a DVD-R, purple back. But yeah, you wouldn't know. It's an interesting one. So Jason Connery plays Ian Fleming. He only got the part because he's Jason Connery. He's Sean Connery's son. It takes Fleming's life, so him getting expelled from schools and university because of affairs. His working life, working as a reporter, and how that got him into trouble, and doing the reporting in Russia, and that definitely got him into trouble. And then how he got signed up to join naval intelligence during the war. However, a lot of it is very exaggerated. He's more physically involved in a lot of it than he would have been in real life. It's very much, there's elements of it that are clearly done in reference to the Bond films. There's chases on trains and, full scale attacks on enemy bases and things like that. That are clearly fictional, basically. But yeah, it's entertaining enough, bit of fluff. It's well done. Just take what's in there with a pinch of salt. Kristen Scott Thomas is in it. Patricia Hodge, Joss Ackland, David Warner, Fiona Fullerton. All sorts of good people in it. This is DC League of Super Pets. So this is an animated film. It's basically the pets. Well, it's Superman's dog Krypto, told through his eyes, if you like. And the effect of Superman's relationship with Lois Lane on him, and then Lex Luthor has a plan, but then there's also a load of pets rescued from a pet store who have developed superpowers because of a hamster who's evil, because she used to be tested on in a lab by Lex Luthor, and they get hit by a ray that gives them superpowers, and it's them trying to overcome Lex, etc., and this hamster. It all sounds very silly, and I wasn't sure about it, if I was going to enjoy it, but it was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was very funny. It was very well done. Yeah, I liked that. So yes, this is why I'm going to talk more about Morecambe and Wise. This is a 20-disc set, I think it is. Yeah, with all their BBC stuff that existed at the time this was released. So this is their 9 series for the BBC, plus all their Christmas specials. So I watched this in order, except I watched the Christmas specials in the run up to Christmas and then went back to the rest. But the Christmas specials, being on separate discs, span the whole 20 years over at the BBC or however long it was. So yeah, some absolutely fantastic stuff in here. Some of it is a bit dated, but not a lot of it. They were never overly, for want of a better phrase, racist, or, I mean, they're a bit sexist, but only as sexist as all men were in the 70s, basically. And all done with affection, not horribly sexist, if you like. Some of the music acts are very dated. Some of them still stand up today. Some of them are nice discoveries for me. And there's even a couple of my proper favourites on it. Alan Price is on here. Gilbert O'Sullivan's on here. Tom Jones is on here. You know, there's various ones. The Christmas specials, particularly the later ones, are definitely their best work. However, in the standard series, there's still a lot of really strong stuff. What is interesting, so I say I watched the Thames one first, then because that's the order they were bought in. Then I started watching this, and I soon noticed that a lot of the stuff in the Thames series were remakes of sketches that were from this series, and particularly the early series. Maybe slightly, brought a bit more up to date or with stuff added on. But then watching this, that is true throughout this as well. So, there's early BBC stuff that they redid 2 or 3 times throughout their run at the BBC. Because, of course, there was no videos or anything like that, An occasional repeat people might have seen, but most people would not remember that 7 years previously they did the same sketch. And in most cases, there's a twist on them when they do them later, not necessarily as in something unexpected happens, but, they add bits to them, they slightly change the situation, stuff like that. But there is a lot of reuse of material, which when you sit and watch 20 discs of Morecambe and Wise, 20... Within, sort of 3 months, I would have watched 26 discs of Morecambe and Wise. So, it becomes very apparent about the repeated stuff. But yeah, their best stuff is some of the best comedy ever done. And it's in what's I found interesting personally is that one of their most famous sketches, which is the stripper sketch, where they're making breakfast to the stripper music, is in the very last of the normal BBC episodes. It's in the last episode of the last series. So right up until, I know it's not the end because I went to ITV, but right up until the end of their BBC stuff, they were still producing some of their best, very best material. But yeah, so there has been a release since then with some recently rediscovered shows. I have that. It is 1, 2, 3, 4 discs away in my to watch pile, so that'll be in the next video probably if you're interested. Not much more. This is Welcome to the Darkness. So this is a documentary about the story of The Darkness, the band, who I'm a big fan of. I'm going to see him live in March, which I'm looking forward to. I've seen him live before a couple of times, but this is a really interesting documentary because they've had a proper interesting story, if you like. It's a bit of a typical rock and roll story in that, they get huge success. Lead singer develops addiction problems, becomes an arsehole, splits the band. One of the band members is his brother. They clash. It's all very typical. And but then they get back together and reform, and everything's wonderful. But they don't reach the same heights of success as they previously had. But they're such interesting characters. It's such an interesting story. It was just, and because I care about this band anyway, it was just a really good and really interesting documentary. There's an hour of additional footage on here, which are just basically outtakes that they didn't use in the documentary. They're sort of mixed quality, and you can see why they weren't included. But it's a nice little package as well. You've got the release in a slimline case, but then you get a poster, of the current lineup, and some art cards, which I haven't even looked at, to be honest, because they're always a bugger to get out of here. No, they're in so tight, I'm not going to, unless I can squeeze. Sometimes you can squeeze one out the middle. Oh yeah, I can. Okay, this should do it. Okay, so we have Frankie, we have Dan, we have Justin, we have the band, we have Rufus, and we have the band again. There you go. So this is Doctor Who and the Daleks, the first of the Peter Cushing Doctor Who films. So this came in the big vinyl box set that I've shown on my vinyl haul videos. So it's this, which is a 4K and a Blu-ray. I don't have a 4K player or TV, so I just wanted the Blu-ray. A vinyl copy of the soundtrack album, plus art cards, a lenticular, and that sort of stuff. So this isn't Doctor Who. You know, this is basically the Daleks story, Doctor Who and the Daleks on TV, what have you, with a character called Doctor Who in it, who has a TARDIS and travels with Susan, Barbara and Ian. However, whilst Susan remains his granddaughter, although I don't think it's ever actually specifically mentioned that she is in this, Barbara could be anyone. She lives with them, so she's presumably either another granddaughter, although she's significantly older, or even his daughter, but that's never mentioned. And then Ian is her new boyfriend, basically, who sort of ends up travelling with them. But there's no mention, which there wasn't at the time. Time Lords weren't invented until the end of the Patrick Troughton era. But there's no mention that he's from another planet or anything like that. It's not a spaceship as such. It's a device he's built. You know, he is not the TV Doctor Who. He is called Doctor Who, which there's some debate over, but technically the Doctor isn't called Doctor Who. Though he is sometimes. That said, I love this film. It's really enjoyable watch. It looks great. It's that right side of silly, but doesn't take itself too sillily, if you like. You know, there's Roy Castle is sort of like the comic relief in it. But yeah, as I say, I really love this film. As you will have seen recently, probably, I have now picked up the second one in the same vinyl box set type thing, which I'll be watching probably later this year. Good extras on here. I listened to the commentary because Mark Gatiss is on it. He's on with Kim Newman and Robert Shearman. So Robert Shearman, another Doctor Who writer, and Kim Newman's just all-round horror, sci-fi, cult film experts guy. But lots of interviews, making ofs, Dalek Mania, which is an hour-long documentary about Dalek Mania, which I didn't watch this time round because I had the same documentary on the DVD release of this and watched it then. But yeah, very good. Couple more. This is for Prince of Denmark. So this is a sitcom starring Ronnie Corbett as Ronnie Corbett. Rosemary Leach plays his wife. I picked this up because it's written by Graham Chapman from Monty Python and Barry Cryer, comedy legend, so that intrigued me. Unfortunately, this was all a bit too safe. So basically, Ronnie Corbett comes from the business world, but his wife, when she was younger, used to work in pubs. They take over as landlord and landlady. She's technically landlady, and he's just married to her and works there. of a pub for Prince of Denmark, and it's about them taking it over, him getting used to life in a pub, the characters, the regulars who drink there, various situations that occur. It is very formulaic. I was hoping, particularly with Graham Chapman's involvement, that there'd be a bit of a bite to it. You know, much of his humour with Python and Aside has an edge to it. You know, he was the wacky, weird one who would throw in the nonsense, if you like, when writing, particularly with Cleese. But it was all, as I say, safe and formulaic. It was enjoyable, but it wasn't as good as I'd hoped it would be. And then finally, Doctor Who, The Collection, Season 8. So this is Pertwee's second season. So this is when Joe Grant joins him. As always with these packages, wonderful, amazing extras, loads of great stuff there. This is not my favourite era of Doctor Who by a long chalk. I've no problem with Jon Pertwee. Love Katie Manning. Like all the unit regulars. The problem is, it's not the Doctor Who I want. It's more of an action series than a sci-fi series. All barring one episode on here for reasons. The episodes are set on Earth, so it gets a bit repetitive and samey. Particularly this particular era, the Master is in every episode, you know, so it doesn't become a surprise that the Master's behind each story. You know, it's all, as I say, it's just not the sort of Doctor Who that I really love. There's still a lot of this that I really like. The Demons is a fantastic story, which is the last story on this set. The others are Terrors of the Autons, Mind of Evil, Claws of Axos, and Colony in Space. Really like Claws of Axos as well, to be fair. The other three are good, you know, but they're just not my sort of Doctor Who. But yeah, it's just, as I say, it's just not the sort of Doctor Who that I really enjoy. But I'm still, you know, I'm a Doctor Who fan. I like it all. It's just, on a scale of likeness, this is nearer the bottom. But I can watch Katie Manning for donkey's years. That's it. That's me up to date. Thank you for sticking with these. I will try and get back on to doing them monthly. To try and keep on top of them now. But yeah, thank you for watching. Like, comment and subscribe. And I'll see you in another video. Thanks. Bye.